Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our interview with Gareth Evans. Gareth is a CEO and founder at VECKTA, which is a marketplace that supports businesses to deploy right energy solutions. Gareth, thank you for joining our Risk Management Show podcast today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Boris. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. So, Gareth, I believe that we will have a very thoughtful conversation on the topic of energy transition, managing costs, power security, ESG, sustainability, because there are a lot of talks on these topics all over the world. So, but before this, could you shortly introduce yourself, tell us about your career path, what brought you to where you are right now, and what you guys at VECKTA are up to these days?
Yeah, absolutely. So Gareth Evans, based out of San Diego today. My accent is from originally Liverpool, England, where I was born and brought up, but always very adventurous, always very outdoorsy, loved geography and environmental science, and that's what I qualified in at university. Had the pleasure of working for one of the largest energy engineering firms globally called Worley for most of my career. Got to travel all around the world, working predominantly in heavy industrial and commercial sectors, mining, oil and gas, LNG, manufacturing, supporting businesses to be able to assess, design, and build assets all around the world. Got to work in Canada, the Middle East, Australia, and now in the US. I've done everything from fly planes with the Air Force, train with the Shaolin monks in China, Ironmen, adventure races, and my big passion today is mountain biking and hanging out with the family. I've got a wife and a 9-year-old boy.
Fantastic. So great description of your pre-VECKTA environment, what you wanted to do, and now probably with your company, what are you guys trying to achieve?
Yep. So the pain point for businesses globally, I think you summed it up in the intro, is businesses around the world are facing 3 primary challenges. Energy costs are increasing, energy security in the form of access to energy, reliable access, and not suffering power outages or even loss of power altogether is a concern, as well as there are sustainability targets that businesses are trying to hit. So these 3 challenges are new for a lot of business leaders. They're not sure what's possible, who to turn to, where to begin. And one of the big opportunities with the energy transition is to generate and store energy right at a business's facility. We call that on-site energy, microgrids, or distributed energy systems. And so what we do at VECKTA is we remove the complexity. We put businesses in control of their energy transition strategy. So we support them to plan their strategy, assess what's possible, configure the right solutions that meet their specific business needs and objectives, and then get competitive quotes from suppliers in our marketplace to have it built. So we remove the whole consulting, engineering, procurement headaches out of the system and ensure that businesses get access to the right energy solutions.
Great. So that's a description of what you do. Maybe perhaps now we can jump to a topic at hand. So, Gareth, can you explain us what does the term energy transition mean, and why is it important for our future? Also, what role does ESG play in shaping energy transition strategy?
Yep. So there's been multiple energy transitions. So this certainly isn't new. It's new to most of us because it's the most modern day. But we've gone from the days of horsepower, water, old school windmills, to coal plants, to gas facilities, and all of that up until now has been largely through utilities providing us power through what we call the centralized grid. So power is generated at big, large facilities. It's sent to us down transmission lines and distribution lines, and then we receive the power. But today we're fairly passive consumers of that energy. It shows up when the utility wants us to get it at the price point they set and with the emission profile that they want us to receive it. The energy transition is largely about moving from this centralized system to what we call a 4D energy future, a future that is more distributed, so generating power at smaller scales, in a more distributed way. It's deregulated, it's decarbonized, and all of that is underpinned by digitalization and digital technologies. And so it's a combination of shifting from this central infrastructure to more decentralized, to more renewable, and shifting the position from being passive consumers of energy to actually prosumers of energy, which is provides more affordable, reliable, flexible, scalable, and clean energy future for all of us.
Mm-hmm. So, can you provide some examples of successful sustainability initiatives within the energy sector and their impact on both the environment and the bottom line? Because how can businesses effectively balance sustainability with profitability? This is important.
Yeah, you're spot on there. You know, we definitely believe that sustainability goes actually hand in hand with profitability, and it should not come at the expense of, especially when you're doing it right. I think a big thing that we're passionate about, Boris, is let's kill bad projects early and often. So let's not waste everyone's time and energy pursuing projects that will never have a good return on investment. There has to be a positive return for all of us. And so we're supporting businesses around the world, and they range in size from convenience stores and breweries to mega mining and manufacturing facilities. And there's some great examples. You know, we recently supported a large manufacturing facility in the northeast of the US. They're experiencing fairly significant cost escalations, and they're very concerned about power outages. And so we looked at their facility. They were spending $250,000 a month in energy costs. And so with an on-site energy system where they can offset using 49% of they can generate 49% of their own energy on site and supplement how they utilize the utility power, so they can buy power from the utility when it's cheap and when it's available. But by deploying a solar, storage, and EV charging infrastructure at their facility, they're able to reduce their energy bills by $96,000 a month and reduce their emissions by 40% throughout the year. So you can see, you know, great win-win scenario. And by having the asset at their facility, they also have greater resilience and energy security for critical operations.
Fantastic. So this is a great example. Because we are a community of risk managers, perhaps can you explain us what are some potential risks and challenges associated with the energy transition and how organizations can mitigate them?
Yep. So obviously, going in order, the big risk to the bottom line is energy costs are escalating. In some parts of the world, they're going up 20, 40+% year on year. I think the reason for this is the central grid we were just discussing. You know, this in some cases is now 50, 70, 100 years old. So it's aging, it's becoming less reliable, it's becoming harder to maintain. And as such, utilities and our service providers are having to invest a lot more money in keeping it running. And that money has to be passed on to someone, and it goes on to us as the ratepayers. And so for businesses globally, energy costs are escalating. And trying to predict where those prices will go is extremely challenging. And so from a risk management perspective, how can you lock in your energy costs today and or reduce them and have control over them for 5, 10, 15, 20 years? And so we have programs called Energy as a Service contract, where businesses can swap their utility bill today for a contract with someone who will finance, build, and operate the energy system at your facility, and then sell you energy at a fixed cost for an agreed period of time. So from a hedging perspective, it allows you to lock in your energy costs. The second risk is power outages. You know, in the US, $150 billion of lost revenue to businesses last year alone as a result of power outages. So huge risk. Samsung in the Houston cold snap several years ago, they lost $270 million in 1 week due to power outages. The whole facility had to be shut down. Then it takes several weeks to ramp back up. So all of these impact safety and security of an asset. They impact production, particularly if you have a production facility where the shutdown, even for the period of time that the power is off, is not the impact. It's trying to then ramp back up. You know, oil and gas, mining, these can take weeks to come back online. So huge impacts to business operations. And then from a sustainability perspective, obviously the risk being consumers are demanding cleaner products. The supply chain is now demanding sustainability targets to be hit. So what we're seeing in a lot of industries, automotive is a great example of this, where the big OEMs are demanding down through all their contractors supplying them parts and materials that they hit certain emission reduction targets. And businesses don't really know how to approach that. And they don't want to just be buying carbon credits because that's an additional cost to the business. Whereas if they can be, building their own solution or having someone else build it for them, they get to achieve the emission reduction while also gaining those operational benefits. And I think the risk for a lot of businesses is, one, finance, consumers, the market itself, the contracts. These are all at risk if businesses don't get proactive and get on the front foot instead of kind of passively waiting for the utilities to maybe figure it out for them. And they'll be waiting a while.
All right, great explanation. So I would like to ask you a personal point of view. What is the major misconception in the field of energy transition that you strongly disagree with? Because we're hearing all this emissions buying and kind of some governments said a specific fund for supporting their companies. I know in Germany they moved away from nuclear, but they are buying coal again. So it's kind of strange for me.
Yeah, like money always talks, doesn't it, Boris? And I think energy is the lifeblood of everything we do. And so governments are realizing that energy sovereignty is absolutely critical. Without energy, our economies, our businesses, our households, everything grinds to a halt. And so I think you're very right in terms of the major misconceptions I see on a daily basis. One, sustainability comes at expense of profitability. And so we've already talked about that, so I won't sort of belabor that. But I'd say for businesses that embrace this and do it properly, design the right system, optimize it for their particular needs and objectives, it can absolutely be profitable as well as sustainable. The other is that battery energy storage is too expensive. We've seen the cost of batteries come down over 80% over the last 10 years. They're extremely powerful in terms of being able to support with resilience and/or support businesses to store the energy that they can generate through renewable resources and use it when they need it. And it also allows them to not use utility power when it's at its most expensive. So being able to shift when their peak demand periods are using batteries. So batteries are extremely exciting, and we see that included in a lot of the solutions we're now deploying. And I think the last one would be we've seen a lot of businesses just kind of knee-jerk reactions say, let's just throw some solar panels on the roof and we'll gain all these benefits. And I think now businesses are realizing that when the power goes out, solar also has to be turned off unless you've got a way of storing it or disconnecting from the grid. And so you gain no resilience from solar-only facilities. Solar only today is also generating energy when it's at its cleanest and cheapest on the grid. And so the economic benefits of solar alone can be challenging, especially in some markets with some of their utility tariff designs. So it's all about making sure that we consider all technologies. We are firm advocates of being solution agnostic. Let's consider solar, wind, storage, gas, diesel, fuel cells, electric vehicles, because one size does not fit all, and geography, utility rates, fuel prices, they all impact the business case. Yeah.
Fantastic. All right. So, and what are the key metrics and indicators that organizations should track to measure their progress in achieving this sustainability goal?
Yeah. So we certainly look at scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 emissions. So emission tracking is critical. And being able to prove that you are reducing your emission profile. I think scope 3 is becoming a very topical conversation because a lot of businesses, they can control scope 2. That's their own emissions that they're generating. Scope 3 is their supply chain. So being able to share with their supply chain techniques and opportunities to reduce their emissions versus just kind of coming in with a a stick and beating people with it and demanding of them through contracts outcomes. I think we need to generate a more co-creative solution for industry to get behind. But I think a lot of this always comes back to commercials. And so we are massive advocates for businesses looking at these solutions from a net present value perspective, an internal rate of return, a return on investment, a payback period, looking at their 20-year cash flow analyses, and then maximizing the incentives that are available to them. I think, you mentioned in Europe, there's great incentives through the likes of the Green New Deal. In the US, you've got the Inflation Reduction Act. This is money for the taking for people who are willing to deploy these systems. And so we should capitalize on that as well and make sure we maximize the credits and incentives that are available.
All right. Fantastic. So you mentioned already some innovative technologies, maybe like batteries, and maybe you can add what are some other innovative technologies and strategies that can help companies reduce their carbon footprint while maintaining cost efficiency?
Yep. Certainly on the on-site energy side of things, solar is now pretty, it's seen in almost every system, I'd say. Batteries we talked about. Fuel cells are really exciting in terms of today they can utilize gas, but in the future they can utilize hydrogen to generate energy. And there's also ways to capture carbon, generate positive outputs in terms of there's a project that I was just looking at in Long Beach that Fuel Cell Energy did, and they're able to generate energy, hydrogen, and water through the utilization of a trigen solution. And so for the off-taker, they got access to water in a water scarce environment. They get power and they get hydrogen to fuel their vehicles. And so that becomes a win-win-win. That's super exciting. And obviously electric vehicle charging for fleets and/or customers is becoming a real prominent thing. And I think people are now realizing that the grid does not have the capacity to be able to support the additional energy demand for electric vehicles. So being able to build your own energy solution to power those assets will be critical to speed and volume of deployments.
Mm-hmm. Okay, maybe if we summarize it, if someone who is listening to this interview would like to walk away with one or two major takeaways, what would it be?
I'd say the biggest takeaway would be the energy transition is actually a super exciting opportunity for businesses. It can be perceived as a major risk. Embrace it, learn about it, and utilize enabling technologies to get the right outcomes. I think we are moving away from the status quo of service-led outcomes, whether it be being sold to directly by suppliers in the market who are going to sell you exactly what they want you to buy versus what's right for you, or even paying consultants millions of dollars for answers. That's not necessary. Let's strip the cost out of the industry. Let's make these projects more accessible. Let's embrace them, and let's deploy them. And we will all learn through doing, and deploying these systems and gaining financial benefits as well as sustainable benefits is a really good step in the right direction.
All right, Gareth. So that's were all my questions. Perhaps if I forgot to ask you something that you feel important for our audience, please go ahead.
I'd say this is all about challenging limits, adapting with purpose. I think there's too much knee-jerk reaction in the industry today, so let's all do it purposefully, and let's empower co-creation. I think this is all about unlocking opportunity together. No business, no individual has all the answers, so let's work together to create the right outcomes for businesses globally, and that will create a thriving future for us all.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Gareth, for your thoughtful interview, and I wish you a great success with your company and your initiatives, and hope we will continue our interviews from time to time to push attention to another topic of this energy transition in the world.
Yeah, thank you for your interest, and thank you for raising awareness, and excited to work with your listeners.
Thank you. Bye-bye.